And then the other thing that I felt to write, and this is not a negative thing, it's not too commanding, but within that obedience, for all of us today, if you are called to bring something to say, then please bring it. But don't bring anything if you're not called to bring it, if that makes sense. I'm not saying sit there quietly. You're not under anyone's authority except Holy Spirit. And then with this, the same thing with, if you're called to do something, to act, then please do it. It's all about obedience today. But if you're not called to act, then be still and know that He is God. And this goes for the worship team as well. If you're not called to sing something, then hold back. But if you are called to sing, then sing. I hope that makes sense. Because all I know is I'm supposed to share about Joseph, and then we have worship time. If something cool happens, great. If it's just standard, great. I don't really care. I don't have the fear of man. I have the fear of God, is what I'm being taught today. I hope that all makes sense. I think that's what I'm supposed to share. I don't know why I'm going to share about Joseph. It's going to be boring as far as I can tell, because I'm just literally just going to go through the story of Joseph. He does have an awesome Technicolor dream coat. I don't think biblically it says Technicolor dream coat, but thanks, Jenny, yes. So bear with as I try and figure out how technology works. So some background. I mean, Genesis is an awesome book. I don't know how many people have actually tucked into Genesis. It's so cool. But we've got Adam and Eve, right through to Cain and Abel, we're right through to Noah, got the Tower of Babel. We see this guy Abram, later called Abraham, come through with his wife Sarah. They have a son called Isaac. Isaac meets Rebekah, and they have two sons, Jacob and Esau. And Jacob has 4 wives, but really he kind of loves one dearly more than the others, and that's Rachel. Hayden, you can probably know what that's like. Yeah. Of the 4. Yeah, no, that's good. Good man. And Rachel has 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. And they're sort of favorite sons. So here we go. You can open your Bibles to Genesis 37 if you like. I am kind of going to just go on through. If I get something wrong or you feel like speaking, please speak. We're all called, like we're all the body of Christ. You should know the Father's voice. And if you're a son or daughter of Christ or of God, then you are not a slave, so you know the master's business. So share it. If you feel like getting up in the middle of while I'm talking and going and praying for someone or laying hands on someone or healing someone, please go for it. Anyway, so Genesis 37, we have a 17-year-old Joseph. And yeah, I'm not going to try it. I'm just going to put tiny little spins on it. But anyway, he's got 11 brothers. He is the second youngest. You just see little things like he brings his father a bad report about his brothers. And then he has dreams. And his dad loves him and makes him a Technicolor dream coat. And then he has these 2 dreams. Actually, Jim, I've prepared a little PowerPoint. I think it's probably on the homepage. I've got some great pictures on this. But no hurries. So the first one is he has these, he says to the brothers, please listen to the details of the dream which I have dreamed. We were binding sheaves of grain in the field. I'm reading the Amplified version here, but it seems to have some King James, so every time there's a dream it says, lo, and lo, my sheaf got up and stood upright, and remained standing, and behold, your sheaves stood all around my sheaf and bowed down to me. So he's telling his brothers that you'll bow down to me. I grew up with two brothers. I'm the middle of two. And I just think anyone that's grown up with brothers, you do not say to your brothers that you will bow down to me. Um, I, the, and it says, like he said some of this in arrogance. And I just think he's young and doesn't know any better. And I think he's excited he's got these dreams. Then he has a second dream. You can flick to the next slide, please, Jim. Then he's got a second dream, and that's of these stars and the moon and the sun bowing down to him. And not only does he take that lovely message to his brothers, he tells his dad as well. And Jacob, or Israel, I'm just going to call him Jacob. Israel's an awesome name. I just like the idea of Jacob and Joseph. Even Jacob rebukes him and is like, "You're having a laugh, mate." So, I don't think he's overly popular except with his dad among his brothers. His brothers are working. Jacob says, "Go find your brothers and just bring me a report." So Joseph wanders off to find his brothers. They see him coming and they say, "Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him." And it eventuates that they don't kill him. They sell him to some Ishmaelites traders. May as well make some money off the back of it. So that happens, and then there's this one. It cuts to Genesis 38, and then we see Judah, who actually was the main conspirator. So the brother Judah said, "Let's go and sell Joseph." And then we see this interesting one chapter where Judah acts very, he's doesn't act righteously to his daughter-in-law Tamar, and there seems to be a change of Judah's heart in that chapter. You can go and check it out. So then Joseph has been taken down. Can you go to the next slide? I should have got the pointer. And next slide. Okay, no, go back. Sorry, I thought I had a picture of the map of where. There it is. So up the top there, where it says Jerusalem, that's the area of Canaan back in the day, and so this is the best map I could find, and so that's where Jacob and his family have settled, and they're nomads. They're just kind of moving stock around there, and so Joseph is brought down to where it says Goshen and Ramses. That's where he's kind of brought down to the area of Egypt. And he is sold to Potiphar, who is the captain of the royal guard. So he's kind of top dog. And Joseph works for Potiphar as a slave, and it says that he is successful and prosperous in everything he does, to the point where Potiphar says, "Look, pretty much you just run everything." This is how Joseph operates. He just naturally can do everything. And so, yeah, he's doing pretty well. Now, he's described as handsome and attractive in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife looked at Joseph with desire, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, with me in the house, my master does not concern himself with anything. He has put everything that he owns in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept anything from me except you, because you are his wife." And so Potiphar's wife speaks to Joseph persistently day after day, and he says no. So then it comes about that it's all the people in Potiphar's house are out, all the men, and Potiphar's wife says, "Lie with me," and Joseph says no, and as he's trying to run off, she rips his robe. And then, so he's innocent, he runs off, he remains righteous, and Potiphar's wife takes the bit of robe to Potiphar and says, "Look," or says to the other men in the house, "Look what he's tried to lie with me." And so Joseph is imprisoned. Just looking for my phone. Thank you to my lovely assistant. Because here's what's cool. Well, not very cool. But in Psalm 105, verse... I told you it was going to be boring, whoever's sighing. This is what Psalm 105, verse 18 says about Joseph when he goes to prison. So I always imagined that Joseph just goes to prison and it's like, it's not too bad. But this is what it says, that Joseph was sold as a slave. His feet they hurt with shackles. He was put in chains of iron. So I don't think prison was an overly fun time for Joseph. Although he did rise, and even in the prison, he was given authority over everything yet again. It happened with Potiphar's house, it's now happening in jail. Okay. So Genesis 40. We've got 10 more chapters to go, but bear with. So then he's in jail, and there's the cupbearer and the butler. The butler and the baker. Cupbearer and the baker. And they have dreams, and Joseph interprets the dreams. And I don't know. Yeah, they're accurate. And he says to the cupbearer, "You will be restored to your position," and to the baker, "You will be hanged." I don't even know how the baker felt at that point, but those things came to pass on Pharaoh's birthday. Then Joseph says to them, "Look, remember me when you go out. Remember that I've given you these words." But he's forgotten. And we don't know how long Joseph is in prison for. It doesn't say. ChatGPT thinks it's somewhere between 10 and 13 years. We know that it's at least 2 full years since the cupbearer and the baker were released. So at least 2 years, but possibly a lot longer. Now Pharaoh has a dream. Does everyone know Pharaoh's dream? Do you want me to recap that? I've got a couple of nods. So there are 7 healthy, fat cows grazing and 7 emaciated cows. So emaciated that Pharaoh had never seen anything like it before. And they come and they swallow up the big fat cows. And then the same happens with, I just want to make sure I'm correct, the ears of grain. So healthy ears of grain get swallowed up by just emaciated ears of grain. So Pharaoh asks all the wise men, all the top knowers and seers and whoever in Egypt, and no one can interpret the dream for him. And then the cupbearer goes, "Oh my goodness, I do know someone. I've kind of forgot about him. It was about 2 years ago. This guy Joseph. You should get him in." So Joseph cleans himself up. He shaves. So my bit that I'm going to add in here is, I think that the time Joseph spends in Potiphar's house, he's learning all about Egyptian customs. He's getting to know how everything works. So he cleans himself up. He goes and talks to Pharaoh, and he says, "The dreams that you've had are basically, there's going to be 7 years of harvest, like lots of food and whatever harvest, plentiful, abundance, and then there's going to be 7 years of famine. So you need to store up as much as you can in the first 7 years so we can survive the next 7. So I just like this part here. I want to read it from the Bible. So Pharaoh says to his servants, "Can we find a man like this, a man equal to Joseph, in whom is the divine spirit of God?" And I don't think they could. So then Pharaoh says to Joseph, "Since your God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and clear-headed and as wise as you are. You shall have charge over my house, and all my people shall be governed according to your word and pay respect to you. Only in matters of the throne will I be greater than you in Egypt." So he's gone from prisoner to now pretty much equal to Pharaoh in like one fell swoop. It's pretty amazing. Kind of like he was in Potiphar's house like he was in prison. So over the next 7 years, Joseph's role is to just travel within the area, checking on everything, making sure we're storing up lots of food. Actually, oh, cool. I like this version of Joseph. Can we go back to the previous slide, Jim? I just had to throw this picture in there. So Joseph's good looking and probably a pretty muscly dude. If you put pearl earrings on that Joseph, I think you've got a middle-aged housewife on your hands. I had to throw that in there. I could not believe my eyes. We just have to be, I just think there's so many representations of people in the Bible that are like, what the heck? I don't think Potiphar's wife was after that. So the next slide is, that's the kind of Joseph if I was a female, that'd be my kind of Joseph. So Joseph's, in charge of everything. And then there's great famine in the land, so Joseph's brothers are sent by Jacob and told, go to Egypt, go and get food. There's food there. I just got goosebumps because I think of those brothers turning up and Joseph seeing them. And I'm not to interpret any of this, but he treats them as spies and he speaks harshly to them. At the same time as he's talking to them, he uses an interpreter, which I think is also really cool. Like, he doesn't give away, I know who you are. And they're like, no, we're not spies. We're here for food. And he says, no, you're trying to find all of the weak parts of everywhere in Egypt. And then they explain everything to Joseph. And then they mention Jacob and the other brother, Benjamin. And he's overcome and he just has to take himself out and weep. An interesting thing, and again, I'm not trying to interpret, but God doesn't ever tell Jacob, it's okay, Joseph's fine. As far as Jacob's aware, I didn't mention that the brothers, after Joseph is sold, they take Joseph's robe and they kill a goat and they put blood all over the robe and they take it to Jacob. And this is one of Rachel's children, and he's just full sorrow. So there's just this really strong bond there. The brothers come, and then, the bit that makes Joseph weep is when Reuben, one of the brothers, says in his native tongue, did I not say, do not sin against the boy, meaning Joseph? We're guilty. And Joseph hears this, and he takes off. So what they do is, Joseph says, yep, you can have some grain, but I want you to come back with that younger brother of yours, Benjamin. And so that's kind of agreed to. They head away. Joseph has given them lots of grain and he's put money in all the sacks. The money that they gave to Joseph, he's put them back in their sacks. So on their way home, they start freaking out. They're like, why have we got all our money as well as the grain? And they think they're really in trouble with God. They go back to Jacob, and Jacob says, do not. So they say, we need to go back to Joseph, and he wants to see this younger brother of ours. And Jacob said, please do not send Benjamin. But if I lose him, as well as Joseph, and as well as, I think it's Simeon. Yeah, so Simeon, is detained by Joseph as like a, come back and with Benjamin, and I'll give you Simeon back. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the show. And Jacob says, do not send Benjamin down, or I will die. You'll bring my grey hair to the ground. But then the next year, they're so desperate for food that Jacob agrees and says, okay, take Benjamin. And Judah, who was the original conspirator, says to his dad, I will take full responsibility of Benjamin. If anything happens to him, it'll be on me. So they head back down, and this time Joseph puts on a big feed. Let's find out where we are. Yep, so Joseph puts on a big feed, and he sees his brother Benjamin. They have a big meal, and Joseph gives Benjamin 5 times as much food, and that they kind of eat separately because the Egyptians don't eat with Hebrews. And then again, Joseph releases the brothers to go back, and this time he plants a cup in Benjamin's sack, and he says to one of his head stewards, "Go after the brothers and find the one that has the cup in his sack." And so he does this, and then they're brought back. And I don't know why. Why does he play all these games? Why does Joseph, why put it, just say, "Look, I'm your brother, all's forgiven." And I'm not here to interpret that. I have my own ideas. So they're all brought back. And then Benjamin is held as this culprit. "You've got the cup." And then Judah pleads with Joseph and says, "Look," he explains everything. "This is who my father is. We had a brother called Joseph, but we think he's dead. This is my father's, basically other favorite son. And he said, if Benjamin does not come back, then he will die. It'll be too much sorrow." And so Judah says, "Take me, I'll be a slave to you, but let my brother Benjamin go." And then it really is too much for Joseph. And that's when he says, "Look, it's me, I am Joseph." And the brothers are stunned, which will be a pretty cool thing to go and actually witness. And then he says, "Go, find my father, bring Jacob back." So the boys go back, talk to Jacob, and it says that his spirit is restored when he hears that Joseph is still alive. And so Jacob and his household move to Egypt. They're given the best pasture, the best land, and Pharaoh honors Jacob and Jacob's household, even though the Hebrews are not considered, they're like second-class citizens. But because of Joseph, they are given this great land. So Jacob's family settles in Goshen, and then, sorry, is there another picture? That picture there, it says that Joseph wept on Jacob's shoulder. It's been 13 years since I've seen each other, and Jacob thinks that Joseph is dead this whole time. This is the best picture I could find of that to represent that moment. But actually, Jacob is an old man. He's actually fairly young here. But you can kind of see, I just think it's really intimate how Joseph weeps on Jacob's shoulder. And I don't think Joseph would have been dressed as like a farmhand. This guy's top dog in Egypt. So you kind of got to use your imagination. It's very interesting looking at biblical images that you can find. I just don't think it represents what actually happened. So then Jacob blesses Joseph and Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. I'm not going to interpret this, but he blesses Ephraim ahead of Manasseh, even though Manasseh is the eldest son. And Joseph is says to his dad, "I think you're getting a bit old. You're not quite aware of who's who." And Jacob knows. He says, "No, I know who's who." And then he gives Joseph a double blessing. And if you want to find out all about the different tribes of Israel, you just look at Genesis 49, and it will describe each of the sons, each of Israel, Jacob's sons. And then Jacob passes away, but before he does, he says to Joseph, "Can you take my body up to the land of Canaan, where my father and my grandfather are from, and bury me there?" That's pretty cool. well, nothing's cool, but well, it is. But when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet into the bed and breathed his last. Like, that's a way to go, I reckon. It's like, I'm just going to do my final affairs. I'm just going to draw in my feet, and I'm going to have my last breath and then I'm off. And he was gathered to his people who had preceded him in death. Then Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept over him and kissed him tenderly. Then Joseph ordered his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So they embalmed him. That takes 40 days. And then Joseph goes and speaks to Pharaoh and says, like, we're not going to do the usual thing here with my dad. Can I take him up to his ancestors' land and bury him there? And Jacob was mourned by Egypt, by the Egyptians, as royalty. I'm not going to interpret that either, but pretty significant. Both chariots and horsemen also went up to Canaan with Joseph, and it was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they mourned there with a great lamentation and sorrow. And Joseph observed a 7-day mourning for his father. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a grievous mourning for the Egyptians." And then from there, very, very briefly at the end of Genesis 50, is the death of Joseph. He lived 110 years. He saw the third generation of Ephraim's children. But he saved the Israelites, basically. He kept them alive. As well in that story, it's kind of I've told the personal story, but the Israelites, as well as other people, they gave all their money to Pharaoh. They gave all their land to Pharaoh. They gave all their livestock to Pharaoh. And in desperation, they gave themselves to Pharaoh. And that's where we kind of leave things before Moses comes on the scene. And the Israelites multiply. Joseph, who was a very popular Hebrew, the next Pharaoh comes along and all of that is forgotten. And so that sets the scene for Exodus. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't feel to add anything. Is there anything I've missed from the biblical scholars in the room? Of the facts rather than the this means that and this means that.